Let's get into that whole debate about this legislated 43% emissions cut by 2030. Given it's less than 8 years away, what is it going to mean in practical terms to small business and households? Joining me to get into some of the detail, LNP Senator for Queensland, former Resources Minister Matt Canavan. Let's start with the detail, Matt. You and I have been in and around government for many years. When you do something this seismic to an economic area, you want the modelling. And you don't want BCA or lobby group modelling, you want Treasury modelling. What sort of modelling has been tabled in the Parliament alongside this legislation that you know, legislators like you can read before you're asked to vote?
Well, Peta, none at this stage, although in fact the bill itself hasn't been tabled. None of us in the coalition have seen this legislation. It's been seen by the Greens, which shows the Labor Party's priorities. They're off negotiating with the Greens. They've got no interest in trying to negotiate with the Liberal National Party senators. They're just here to do deals with the Greens. So we haven't seen legislation. We don't know the impact of it. The Labor Party will say, Peter, that at the election they produced modelling. There are a lot of holes in that modelling. The biggest hole was exposed today in the Governor-General's speech, where there was no mention of the $275 the Labor Party promised to slash from your electricity bill. You might recall, Peter, that Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen made a big deal of that if you vote for us, we'll make your electricity bill $275 cheaper. And I'm sure all Australians would love to have that right now, given cost of living pressures. Well, that's gone. That's not mentioned at all in the big speech today to Parliament outlining the government's agenda. Instead, the government says, new Labor government says, we'll save hundreds of dollars from your electricity bill. They've walked away from their modelling already that existed, so they have to produce new modelling surely here to the Australian Parliament. There'll probably be a Senate inquiry into this legislation. They've got ample time to do that.
Well, look, it's not the only thing they've walked away from. I mean, they made a promise before the election, and I'll quote it. It comes from a tweet you've reminded people about today. They said not a single Australian coal mine will be impacted by their climate policy, but that's not true now, is it, Matt?
No, once again, surprise, surprise, the things that Chris Bowen and others said before the election to get elected are very different from what they're saying now they're in government. So before the election, Chris Bowen and Pat Conroy and others were all out there trying to get the votes of coal miners to give them government. Now, as I say, they are focused completely, the Labor Party is focused completely on the votes of Greens senators, and that's their priorities. They're letting the Greens rewrite their climate legislation. And now Chris Bowen is quoted as saying that all coal and gas mines, new coal and gas mines, will automatically be covered by their emission cuts, by their new carbon tax. Whereas before the election, he was at pains, along with his mate Pat Conroy, to say, no, you got nothing to see here. We're going to have these competitiveness protections to make sure that no coal or gas mines will be impacted by our policies. Well, that was proven to be a complete lie. So we've already got, in the first day of this government, we've already got a broken promise on electricity prices and a bald-faced lie on protecting people's jobs.
Right, I want to move off emissions targets now and ask you about this controversy today regarding Manly and these gay pride jerseys. Now, I know when he faced similar criticisms with rugby union, you strongly defended Israel Folau's right to freedom of religion. This commitment to inclusion that the jersey is supposed to represent doesn't appear to extend to people of faith, Matt. What's your reaction to the events of today?
Look, I support the players standing up for their beliefs and values. They've got enormous courage to do this. They're going to be subject to massive amounts of criticism. There's a huge double standard here because I don't know if you recall, Peter, but an Australian cricketer a few years ago refused to wear a jersey with a VB, a beer company's logo on it, and he was feted as a hero because it was inconsistent with his Muslim beliefs. But they're probably not going to be feted as heroes, these Pacific Islander players here from Manly. But so good on them for standing up for their convictions. I want to make a point that maybe I haven't heard that much made today, though, too, is that, look, I'm an NRL fan. I love watching the footy on the weekend. And I don't care what your sexual orientation is, but I don't know what people's sexual orientation has to do with rugby league. I just want to watch the footy. I just want to kick back on a Friday night and watch the football, and I don't want all this other virtue signalling rubbish infecting this game and into sport. Can't we have a space in our lives where we don't have to think about politics, we don't have to think about the moral posturing of our betters and elites. Let's try and keep it that way and keep all this rubbish out of it.
I suspect there's plenty of players across the board, Matt, and supporters too that will agree with that. Have a good next 2 days of the Parliament. You'll certainly be working from here on in, question time's back, etc. Matt Canavan, thank you for your time.